slowly. You don't want to do it fast. And you're reading this number right here. And essentially what's happening, the equipment's running, you're slowly cutting the restriction off. You're not going to cut it off all the way, because if the pump is working properly and you cut it off all the way, you'll blow that pump up like a popcorn kernel. It will literally blow up and crack open as if it was made out of popcorn seed. The metal pump, I am not kidding.
Hey, all right, so this is a different one from what I normally am doing. Yeah, so I'd say the three most favorite things, if I could just do these three things with mobile diesel, it would be continue with the in-frame repair versus replacing. They're great jobs. They're normally 2 weeks to 5 weeks beginning to end, and the pace is great. You've got a little wiggle room to bust out the camera and video record, and it's great. Another thing that I enjoy immensely is electrical, right? So I used to teach it at a trade tech department in junior college, and I'm in electrical, computer diagnostics, got tons of software and all sorts of testing devices and that sort of thing. And the third thing that I can't get enough of is hydraulics. I love hydraulics. They're fun. The problem is when I'm doing an in-frame rebuild, I 100% have the wiggle room to film. But when you're getting called out on a hydraulics job, normally the situation is you've got 10 guys on the payroll, the equipment's not working, they're standing around, the foreman is going nuts because he's losing money, and the last thing he wants to hear is, hold on, I gotta bust out my video camera. They're 100% not going to put up with that. It's almost embarrassing talking about. So those are much more high-stress job situations. You know, they're still fun, but you've just got to be nose to the grindstone and get this equipment running as quick as possible. Other than that, they won't appreciate you being there. And that's what today was. It was super stressful. We had an auger stuck in the ground. The longer the auger stayed in there, it was on a drill rig with some geothermal job where they're putting in some piping, but it will get stuck in there permanently. Supposedly, I've never seen one actually get stuck, but this is what I hear. If they stay in there underground too long. And we had a job where the hydraulic line feeding the motor was fed through a boxed frame. So it was a 25-foot run along a frame, and then they welded a sheet of steel onto the frame to stiffen the frame up. But unfortunately, you have no access to the leak at that point. And then I thought, well, all right, I was parked at a job site for the next day. The next couple of days was a few RVs. But I figured, well, I had some light. I'm going to do some quick filming here and just get a quick intro to what's involved in doing hydraulics in the field. And it ended up being like 25 minutes, and it was getting dark, and I was frantically going as quick as I could. And I had this new GoPro. I had never used it before, and it turns out that I guess the GoPro doesn't really care about the darkness. So all that frantic pace was for nothing. Oh yes, one final thing. I stumbled across this the other day. It turns out that 99.2% of the folks watching these videos don't subscribe. I knew it wasn't a big number, but I thought, wow, you'd think I'd at least be able to get 1%. If this video in any way is adding knowledge to your life, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. Thank you.
Hey, this is Mark from Mobile Diesel. There's my truck. I just came back from repairing a drill rig. We had a hydraulic line break, and the drill rig, the auger got stuck in the ground, and you kind of under a little bit of time pressure, because the longer the auger is stuck in there, the harder it is to get out. Sometimes you can't get them out of the ground. The problem was the auger, the hydraulic line that broke, started leaking. It was boxed in a frame, and what that means essentially is the frame feeds the 25-30 foot runs of hydraulic lines, and then from there to stiffen the frame they weld a plate over the frame, so it's boxed, and you'd have no access to the hydraulic lines, and so you've got to pull them out. I thought this would be a great video, show what's involved in doing proper mobile hydraulic repair in the field, all the tools that you need. So I thought might as well just real quickly do it. I just drove back to where I'm parked right now, but before I lose the light, I thought I'm gonna yank all the necessary tools out just for fun, make a quick video here. So here you go. So the first thing you got to have if you're going to do this kind of field repairs, you need a decent workbench. So I've got a small one in the front. This holds all my steel for welding. Works as a great counterweight too, because the rear end is quite bouncy if I don't got a lot of steel in the front. So I hold all the steel in there, but that's not a big enough workbench to do a hydraulic repair. So I've got this guy right here. Oh, baby. This is a lift gate that I welded on. Came from a Wonder bread truck. Cut it in half and welded on a ramp. It's got a vise. I chain the cylinders when I need to crack them open right here. Gotta have a workbench. And it varies. You could vary the height depending on if you have a tall person working on it or not. So that's the first thing. I'm using this GoPro for the first time too, so I'm just trying to dial it in. I think it's still running. Hopefully it's still running. Sorry. Yep, still running. Okay. I'll probably edit that part out. Okay. So workbench. So what's the next thing? In no particular order. You need parts. Lots and lots of parts. So this is what I pretty much do every time I go out to a field, do a field repair. So these guys here are ball valves and such. All sorts of different ball valves depending on what's needed. There is higher crimping parts as well. I'll get to them, but when you're doing a lot of transfer of fluids and hose repair from tanks, you need hose barbs. Lots and lots of hose barbs. All sorts of types. So these guys here, these are band clamps. They are tighter than hose clamps, but they're definitely not what you want to be using when you're crimping hydraulic lines. But we have all that, all the different nails and such. And you know, brass galore. And then same thing. Down, boo boo. And we got elbows and such. Gotta have all this too. Okay. Along with all that, you need fasteners, whole lot of fasteners. Lots of metric, domestic, all sorts of stuff. Heat shrink, brackets, anchoring points, all that sort of stuff. Tools, need lots of tools. I know it's pretty obvious. Get to specifics. Let's pull that guy out. All sorts of tools, right? We call these nose pickers. Sometimes we need them to pull them off the line. Wrenches, all sorts of wrenches. So these are crow's foots right here. Sometimes you need to feed them in some deep cave. We also got line wrenches. line wrenches are these guys here. They feed through lines. They got a little piece missing. And then you got shorties, ratchets, all sorts of stuff there. And then you got bigger wrenches here. This is the bread and butter of hydraulics right here. These are double open-ended wrenches with different angles. So it's a total of 4 angles. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the reason is, with the hydraulics, you don't have a lot of swing. So you go, and then you flip it, and you flip it, and the final, and you just keep working it. 1, 2, 3, 4, like so. And yeah, lots and lots of these guys here. And then you got what's called spanner wrenches. And these guys are used to pull the cylinders apart. So what are we saying there? So I pull cylinders apart in the field and rebuild them right there. So the reality is, when you rebuild a cylinder, you're supposed to take it in, rebuild it, pressure test it, bring it back. So that's 2 trips, 2 lots of travel time, fuel mileage surcharge, a week of downtime. It's terrible and it's expensive. And what I usually tell my customers are, we can take a chance, rebuild the cylinder on the same day in the field. We chain it to this workbench right here, because there's a lot of torque involved in rebuilding them, and it may leak afterwards. But of the 100+ cylinders I've rebuilt in the field, literally only once did the thing leak, and that was for East Bay Water Agency out in Berkeley. And that particular cylinder, when we brought it in, we couldn't get it to seal, and we took it to a specialist that built cylinders, and he couldn't even get the thing to seal. So that thing was unrebuildable. So usually my customers will like, heck yeah, go for it. I'll take the chance and pay double if I have to take it off a second time. But yeah, I'd like you to try to rebuild it in the field so I could get the equipment going the same day. So what's involved in rebuilding cylinders in the field, so John Deere specifically, you've got to rip the gland nut off. So when you rip the gland nut off, you need what's called a torque multiplier. And this bad boy is a transmission for wrenches. It's a ferociously strong wrench. You anchor the guy to the ground with this here. And that bar feeds into here. It rests on the workbench. You've got 1 wrench in here, and it multiplies the torque to thousands and thousands of foot-pounds right here. And that's what we use to torque the gland nut for the John Deere cylinders off and on. A lot of the regular cylinders, like on the Cats, for example, don't really use these torque multiplier. It's regular sockets, and that usually does the trick. As far as making hydraulic lines, okay, well, before we talk about making hydraulic lines, a lot of times in order to get the cylinders off, you need to blow the pins out, and the pins are all eaten, chewed, and ridged, and they won't come out. So what I usually have to do is take a number 8 oxygen acetylene torch. I think it's this guy right here, and I blow the center of the pin out, and then I take a 1/2-inch air hammer, and I blow the pin out of the place that's holding up the cylinder. This won't work unless you blow the center of that pin out first. That's the only way to get them out sometimes. Yeah, when you make hydraulic lines, you need hydraulic crimps, which are all these guys here. And this is what's used to make the high pressure lines, right? So I was talking about these guys here. They hold quite a bit of pressure, but it's mainly for transferring and stuff. These guys combined with a normal hydraulic fitting, we crimp them with these plates and the rest of the crimping kit, which I'm not going to pull out. And then so when we pull these lines off, a lot of times we got to pull a lot of fluid out of the tank. I use, sometimes, this is a vacuum line. I mostly use it for motor oil, not for hydraulic oil, but it runs off of pneumatic. We've got a big pan here, and we've got different fittings that fit onto this guy right here. But really, gotta use a 12-volt pump, which is here, right here, and pull the lines out of the, I've got 6 of these guys here. So what are these? These are what's called electrician's fish tape. And I've got these fittings right here, different size fittings, different types. They're hydraulic caps with the hole drilled out of them. And what I do is I take these guys and I connect them to the bad line that's encased in a 25-foot rectangular steel tunnel, essentially, right? And as we pull the damaged line out, the electrician's fish tape takes its place, and this just sits there waiting for the new line, and then we use the electrician's fish tape to pull the new line through. And that's how it's done. Now the bread and butter of the work, no, not that one, that guy. All right, so we've got all sorts of different hydraulic fluids, but and then these are some crimpable ends here. That go with those crimps, right? These guys here. I've got a few briefcases of these. These are just the common ones. And then these are all the different pieces of test equipment. So this here is this actually has nothing to do with hydraulics. It's for pulling gasoline out of diesel tanks when they put the wrong fuel in at the gas station, because you can't siphon it through the fill nozzle. So I gotta like pull the feed lines and pull it from underneath the truck. So this has nothing to do with hydraulics, but I use it all the time. Lots of people put gasoline in their diesel fuel tanks. This is for Ford 6 liters and 7.3s and 7.4s. All right, hydraulic plug kits. JIC plugs, super common in the US. Right? This caps the line so you don't make too much of a mess. This caps the female line, and this caps the male line, like so. This is the one I used today, I believe. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you can see these guys have the holes in them. Use them for the electrician's fish tapes. Now, normally when I'm changing a manifold, sometimes there'll be like 16, 20 lines going in. You need a lot of these plug kits, right? 1 or 2 ain't gonna do it. It's gonna make a royal mess otherwise. We don't want a royal mess. There's another type of plug. So we got JIC is one, and O-ring face, ORF, is another. And basically, O-ring face is a caterpillar design. So instead of metal to metal, they use a flat surface like this guy do this, right? Popular. This holds more pressure than JIC and takes more vibration. JIC is older, but the thing is, JIC, there's a few other types for the rest of the planet, but in the US, JIC and O-ring face are the two types of fittings for hose ends that go in the ends of lines. So these don't really go into cast pieces like, say, motors and manifolds and such. These go at the end of lines. JIC, O-ring face. Why am I telling you that? Because when I pull the rest of the test kit out, it's going to make sense. All right, so let me put these back for now. It's getting dark. Got to get this done. Okay. What else is there? Oh, Podzilla. Yeah, this is for pods moving and storage. It's just unique parts for their equipment. All right. So we got these guys here. This is a 4 briefcase test equipment. All right, briefcase number 1. Let me move that back. Okay, these are adapters. Now these are not JIC and O-ring face. These are NPT and O-ring boss. These are the guys that go into cast pieces like motors and manifolds. And with this guy, which is well over 100 years, it goes in everywhere. This is the common thread fitting for plumbing fittings at Home Depot, for the beer taps at microbreweries, your refrigerator. It goes in everywhere. And the nice thing about it is there's nothing proprietary about it. I like to call this the Satoshi Nakamoto of hydraulic fittings, because there's no proprietary. Everybody's allowed to use it. It's the most popular fitting in the world, and there's no restrictions on using it. Super old design. This is what most of the world uses in their homes, and you still see majority of automotive applications into the motor using this. Okay. This type of fitting you can only really get at a hydraulic store. This is O-ring boss. I don't know why it's not called O-ring base, because O-ring is at the base, but it's O-ring boss. Okay, this is all going to make sense in a moment. Let's put these guys over here. These guys here, NPT, National Pipe Thread. I have it own special, more parts, as you could see. All sorts of NPT, because it's so common that I carry every angle, every application, bushings, caps, threads, all that sort of stuff. That's the magic case. I use it non-stop. And then this is the metric stuff, the banjo fittings, everything you see on the Mercedes and all that. But since I'm running out of light, I'm not going to even bother pulling all that out. This guy here. So these are where I get the hydraulic fluid when we replace the hydraulic fluid. You've got a few different types of hydraulic fluid. When you're mobile, you got to keep it tight. Okay. This guy here, these are flow restrictors. This is a flow restrictor kit. And once again, what I do is I have the JIC to cut a line with a restrictor like so. I'll explain in a second. Okay, so why do I have this guy here? I'll show you in just a second. I'm gonna get the other briefcases out. Adapter kit. I'll show you what that's about in a second. And the gauges and whip lines. Oh, okay, a lot of stuff here. All right. So essentially the logic of this is when you get called out for a power problem, you've got to diagnose if the power is something downriver or upriver. So you choose a point in the river, usually the middle, and it's a divide and conquer strategy. And so you're going to tap into the hydraulic line and bypass it into a pressure gauge, right? Nice lovely pressure gauge here. And when you bypass it into a pressure gauge, you could read what's going on. So generally what's going to happen is you have a ball valve like so, right? And then you have a whip line, and this whip line connects into the pressure gauge like so. And then, is this the right size? Yes. Remember I said O-ring boss goes into cast pieces like so. O-ring boss. And we got this guy here. Boy, it's getting dark. And then we've got these guys here, which essentially feed into, so this is O-ring face, right? Line to line, like so. And then the equipment's hydraulic line goes into here, and it returns back into the equipment line here. And you've got the pressure gauge on here, like so. It's not the right size though, but I'm not, the right size is in here. I just don't know if I could find it in time. Let's just go for it, shall we? These are all JIC, O-ring face. Like so. Pressure gauge goes onto here, like so. And essentially, you've got to slowly turn this valve, slowly. You don't want to do it fast, and you're reading this number right here. And essentially what's happening, the equipment's running, you're slowly cutting the restriction off. You're not going to cut it off all the way, because if the pump is working properly and you cut it off all the way, you'll blow that pump up like a popcorn kernel. It will literally blow up and crack open as if it was made out of popcorn seed, the metal pump. I am not kidding. But what you're trying to do is see if the pump is healthy or not. So you're slowly restricting it, and you're seeing if that number is going up. And if that number is going up, you know the pump is healthy. You got to start doing the divide and conquer strategy further down river. If you're doing this here, and you go all the way and lock it up, and it only goes up to 3 psi, then you know something is wacky upriver. Either a pressure relief valve, or the pump itself is already broken, a crack, something going on there. Usually if there's no pressure downriver, it's usually something to do with the cylinder bypassing or the motor. The receiving end of the pump is worn out. And so you got to figure that out by taking this guy further downriver. And if the pressure doesn't go up, that means you got to take this guy further upriver. And that's how you do a diagnostic in the field. And then from there, you either are rebuilding a cylinder, rebuilding a pump, replacing a pump sometimes to, you know, that sort of thing. And a lot of times, you know, you've got broken lines, and you gotta snake them out with the electrician's fish tape, which is what I had to do today. And we also have a flow and volume gauge. I rarely use that thing. It's this here does most of the jobs. And if you are an owner of a single piece of equipment, you need nothing close to this. It's just you have to have a whole variety of different combinations depending on the equipment, whether it's European or Japanese or Asian or made in the US. And so you need all this stuff. But if you have a single piece of equipment, you literally figure out what you need, and you just have one whip line, one gauge. I mean, and then I use these gauges. I sequence Komatsu's. They don't use threaded pressure valves. They actually use shims, so I gotta like put one on each hose, like so, and do my thing that way. So there's a lot to it, but it's a little bit easier if it's just one piece of equipment and you're the owner of it and you have a farm or something like that. Then it works out just fine. Yeah, well, I'm running out of light. There's a few more hydraulic goodies, but I think I'm just gonna stop this video here, and hopefully this came out all right. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave the question in a comment. I've been very good about answering everybody's comment. Thank you again.